Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the places at Hawk Blogger. It is game day. It is game day for the Seattle Seahawks, who will be facing the Green Bay Packers tonight, prime time at 5:20 p.m. Pacific time. And man, I don't know about all of you, but generally when I'm getting closer to games, I tend to get a little bit more nervous, or I tend to get a little bit less confident. And I don't know if that's just me or that's just nerves or what, but as you know from following me, I'm a pretty analytical guy. I spend a lot of time kind of really trying to get to the truth of a matchup between a few different teams. So I have a decent idea of whether the Seahawks are going to win or at least be competitive. But in these situations, a lot of times as I get closer, I get a little bit less confident. Well, that's not the case this time. That's not the case this time. There are a few situations, and they're notable for me, that the more I sit with the game, the more I deep dive into the game, the more I listen and watch footage, watch past games, listen to other people that I respect, think about what I really know about what's going on with the Seahawks and how that matches up with their opponent. I'm feeling more confident about this game than I was even when I picked the Seahawks to win earlier this week. And so, you know, the part of that that's notable to me is a couple things. One, my son can tell you that's usually a pretty good sign. He texts me before, the day of every game, and his general feeling is if I feel good about the game, that's a really good sign. And if I feel bad about the game, that's a pretty bad sign. So he's learned to trust my instincts, which is flattering. And I've generally learned to trust my instincts. There have definitely been some surprises along the way. This year has gifted us a number of those. But in this particular case, I am feeling more confident about this game, even though I already was feeling confident. And the part that's really interesting to me is that Packers fans are not feeling worried about this game. I'm telling you, Packers fans are not feeling worried. I did my first look episode earlier this week on Wednesday, as I always do. I dove deep. I shared some of the reasons why I thought this matchup actually could go the Seahawks' way. And Will Hart, bless his heart, made a nice little short clip of it, posted on our YouTube channel, posted it on Instagram, posted it on TikTok. And it's gone pretty viral. I went in, and for people that don't remember, I talked about the fact that the Packers were dead last in drop back success rate. Okay, 32nd in the league, which I think is still a mind-boggling number. The only person I've seen that knows that number in national press is Ben Solak. He mentioned it on the podcast with Mina Kimes. So I think that's good company. Ben's a pretty smart guy. So 32nd in dropback rate. I mentioned that they're also 29th in pressure rate, and that the teams that the Seahawks have faced in similar pressure rate profiles are like Atlanta and Detroit and New England. And that when they faced those types of teams, Arizona, Detroit's actually moved up quite a bit since then, but Arizona, New England, and Atlanta were similar pressure rate kind of defenses. Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense did very well against those teams. And then I talked about some of the injuries. They've gotten some guys back since that time that they weren't necessarily expected to get back. But Evan Williams, one of their safeties, came out of concussion protocol. He'll play. But Jair Alexander is not going to play. So they still are, going to be playing with, Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine at corner. They're a little thin there for sure. Anyway, it was all factual, is what I put in there. Now, Will picked a provocative caption saying that the Packers defense is Swiss cheese, which is funny. I certainly wasn't that bold, but why am I telling you all this? Well, the comments on that TikTok video, folks, it is just comment after comment after comment from Packers fans. Like, I can't wait to come back to this after the game. You guys are absolute trash. Like, I'm looking at some of them right now. This isn't going to age well. We don't need to be good at pressuring the quarterback because we're going to score 50 points on you. Like, this defense isn't injured now. You don't know what you're talking about. So, I mean, comments on social media, none of this bothers me, but the brazen perspective I'm hearing from Packers fans, not just there, but across the web. I've looked at Packers blogs. I've looked at, different places where Packers fans are congregating. I don't sense even a shred of concern about this game, which is wild to me. Like, I get being confident. The Packers are a good team. The Packers are a good team. They are. And that's part of why I'm excited about this game. But the Packers just lost to Detroit for the second time. They are out of the divisional race for them. They've won one more game than the Seahawks. They've lost every game they've played against a certifiably good football team. They're 0-4. Vikings, twice to the Lions, once to the Eagles. And the Seahawks don't have necessarily a signature win either, where you'd say, okay, they like really belong. But everyone's like, oh, the Seahawks have only beat one team with a winning record. Well, that's currently. The Packers have beaten two. And so and you even go to the quarterbacks. Like, Geno Smith has had some really bad interceptions this year. You know who's had a higher percentage of his throws picked off than Geno Smith this year? Jordan Love. So I look at these teams, I look at them together, and I see a Seahawks defense that is every bit as good as the Packers offense. And we'll see how they match up tonight. Styles makes fights. We'll see if these teams, like the Packers offense, has an edge against the Seahawks defense. I'll talk about a couple things more that I've looked at there in a bit, specifically inside runs and the inside running game. It's a big part of things for the Packers and also where the Seahawks have made strides defensively. But I think the place where I believe the Seahawks have the biggest chance to make this game much more positive than people want to believe is possible is on offense. And I think that everyone's like, oh, it's a one-game sample size. I don't think it's a one-game sample size. I think the play of the offensive line in the Jets game was also very promising. And I think it got more promising against Arizona. And this is going to be their third week together. And now they're going to have confidence that they've seen some success from what they've done. And they've got a running back in Zach Charbonnet that's actually tasted success. And Kenny McIntosh that's tasted some success. So they don't need to find themselves in this game. They just need to be themselves in this game. And that's a huge difference from where they were earlier, where they were just kind of looking for an identity, looking for what they could be. And what we found is the Seahawks have been able to repeat plays. They've been able to run that GT counter, the guard tackle counter play, multiple times, multiple games. It hasn't always worked, but they've run that play over and over again now. Like, they've got reps on that play. They know how to do it. They know how to do duo, the double team blocking in the run game. They have that in their bag and they can go to it. Earlier in the season, you couldn't really say that about anything in the run game. Nothing seemed to be working on a regular basis. And add into that you've seen two of the better performances from a pressure rate perspective in pass protection the last couple of weeks. That's a big step forward. Add into that Geno Smith was able to utilize the check down in this last game against Arizona and has been playing, behind a line that's been playing better. and is now going to face a defense that doesn't generally create much pressure. And when they do, it is with blitzes. And when Geno Smith is blitzed, he generally punishes blitzes. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when blitzed. So I look at that, and I'll admit one thing, because we're all friends here. We're all family here, right? There was part of me that wanted to put out a very bold tweet last night. And I had it typed up and I kind of just deleted it. And so I have to own that. I'm not yet at the point where I'm ready. Like, I'm not at the 2012, 2013 Seahawks point, or the 2005 Seahawks point, where I am so confident in who the Seahawks are and so confident that the rest of the NFL and the rest of the nation doesn't know who they are, that I am like ready to fully be out there. I predicted a win. I think I predicted a pretty large win for the Seahawks, but I'm not ready to be belligerent about it quite yet. And maybe I shouldn't, now that I'm a credentialed media member, but that is part of just who I am. I think that's part of the fun in this. And what's keeping me from feeling that level of certainty is that the Seahawks have had moments this year where they had gotten to a point where they were going to face a big test. They were 3-0 going into Detroit, and we saw a really bad performance by the defense there. I personally didn't lose a lot of confidence in the team from that, because I thought the way that Geno Smith and the offense played was every bit as encouraging as the defense was discouraging. But still, it was a bad moment. And then the 49ers game at home, I think the last primetime game at home. And that was, they just didn't come out. They weren't ready. They were not the right team at that point. Then the Falcons game, they went and they looked like they'd kind of found their footing. They were getting healthy. They had their players back, it seemed. We didn't know that there was still going to be even more change on the defensive side of the ball. And the Bills ran them off the field. Now, I can go back and look at all those things and say, well, Connor Williams isn't here to snap the ball over Geno's head 3 times in a game or step on his foot, at the goal line. Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker can't hurt us anymore. Anthony Bradford is not going to hurt us in this game. I can look at some of those things and know conceptually that there's real differences, and it's part of why I'm confident, but I do have to see it. Like, where I'm a little bit different than national folks, and I think just the casual fans in evaluating this matchup, is that a lot of folks are like dismissive of the Arizona Cardinals. Like, that's a nothing thing to have swept them twice in 3 weeks. Arizona Cardinals, before they played the Seahawks, were the odds-on favorite to win that division and were red hot. I mean, they had demolished the Bears. They demolished the Jets. By the time the Seahawks faced them, even in Arizona, they hadn't allowed a touchdown to an opponent at home in 3 games. That's pretty good. And they were playing pretty darn well. And they also were coming off a bye week. And the Seahawks just destroyed them. I mean, the score was 16-6, but anyone that watched that game knows that the Seahawks really just crushed the souls of the Cardinals in that week. Like, I think that was the first time they ran into a team that they couldn't run over. And then they did it again in a game that they knew they had to win at home. They were absolutely like, they were confident in the adjustments they had made. They were ready to come in and win the division. If they won that game at home, the likelihood that they would win the division is pretty darn high, because their divisional record have been really good. Like, there's a lot of reasons the Cardinals had to feel very good. They beat a good team that was highly motivated in that moment. So I don't think that those are nothing dismissible victories. I do think that from a talent level, the Green Bay Packers would be the most talented team the Seahawks would have beaten if they win this game tonight. And Jordan Love is a different class of quarterback than the quarterbacks that they have beaten so far. I think Brock Purdy has been in that class. I don't know if he's in that class right now based on how he played Thursday, but he's in a similar class to Jordan Love, I would say. And they did beat him. And that kind of gets me to another piece that that feels relevant and I want to share. Before I do, let me get to some super chats here. Love this. We have got Hawks fan Matt Man has gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. Thank you, Matt. Definitely one of the most generous and engaged and participatory parts of our community. So really appreciate Matt every time. Chris Clark has gifted 5 more Hawk Blogger memberships. So that's 15 people that we can welcome to the party. So I love that. Please, if you get one of these free memberships, consider giving one. Consider extending your membership past the free 1 month. Be part of this ride because the Seahawks team is rising. I think everybody feels it. Rick R gives $12.12. Love that. That's a good luck number. I also want to let folks know we're up over 80 seats that have been sold to Seahawks fans on the Seahawks fan ticket registry. You can find that at hawkblogger.com. I will probably send out one more email with listings. If you haven't signed up yet as a buyer of tickets or a seller, go to hawkblogger.com, find the Seahawks fan ticket registry, fill out the form, sign up. I will send out. It'd be great if we can get 100 people. I don't know if we're going to make it at this point. It's getting close, but we've sold a bunch. So that's 80 Seahawks fans in seats that might have gone to Packers fans. And so I feel good about that. And I really appreciate everybody helping get the word out about that. And there goes Rick R with 5 Hawk Blogger memberships as well. Thank you, Rick, for donating. Rick has been such a great and generous part of the community. So really, really appreciate you, man. So what was I referring to? Well, so there's something that has happened for the Seahawks in this season that I think does feel a little reminiscent. It's not quite the same, but it's a little reminiscent. I want to take you back to the early 2000s. All right. Early 2000s, the kind of team of the division at that point was the kind of fading but still powerful greatest show on turf. It was the St. Louis Rams at that point. And going into like the 2000, like late 2003 through 2004 season, the Rams just kind of owned the Seahawks. They had won 4 straight games, including a wild card playoff game in Seattle back between 2003 and 2005. And so they were kind of the nemesis for the Seahawks at that point. And one of the big moments in the 2005 season was the Seahawks were 2-2. This is the 2005 Super Bowl Seahawks. They were 2-2 to start that year. They had just lost an overtime game to what was at the time the Washington Redskins. And they were traveling to their nemesis, the St. Louis Rams. And what happened in that game, I think, set up the rest of the year. They fell behind early. It was exactly the way these teams had played. Opening kickoff, Chris Johnson returns it 99 yards for a touchdown to give St. Louis a 7-0 lead. But then the Seahawks did what they did. They had a big drive. Sean Alexander scores a touchdown, ties the game. They stop him. They have another big drive. This time, Jeremy Stevens gets a 30-yard pass from Matt Hasselbeck. Touchdown. They take the lead. Rams come back, tie it. Teeters back and forth and back and forth. Torrey Holt had a touchdown. Joe Jurevicius had a touchdown. This was the Mark Bulger St. Louis Rams, by the way. Josh Brown had his couple of field goals. Sean Alexander had another touchdown. Steven Jackson had one for the Rams. It was 34-28 Seattle going into the final quarter. And the two teams would trade field goals in the fourth quarter, and the Seahawks would wind up winning 37-31. It's a big game. They beat their nemesis. They ended the losing streak. What would they do from there? They just went on and won 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 straight games. They won every other game that season until the final game of the year, where they rested their starters against the Packers. So it was this like dam breaking a little bit, beating your nemesis. Well, something else happened in 2000, really in 2012. At that point, the 49ers were a little bit of the big bad guys. They had been to a Super Bowl. They were playing very well, Jim Harbaugh. And the Seahawks had lost 4 straight games between 2010 and 2012. They had lost 4 straight games. So even in the 2012 season, they lost their first game against San Francisco, in San Francisco, 13-6. And then we all know what happened in week 16. That was a game where even though we knew the Seahawks were playing really, really well, the nation hadn't like the 49ers were coming off quite a good streak themselves. Colin Kaepernick had been throwing a bunch of, I think they had just beat the Patriots, who were obviously very good. They won in New England. And I want to pull up that box score because I believe Colin Kaepernick he had 4 touchdown passes in that game. He had been like basically on fire. And so they were 10-3 going into that game against the Seahawks. What happened? You guys know what happened. Seahawks go up 21-0, end up winning 42-13. Just an absolute overwhelming destruction of their nemesis in that game. Well, I wouldn't say it's exactly the same thing, but something happened this year. The 49ers, again, were kind of the kings of the division. They had won 6 straight games against the Seahawks. And in week 11, as we all know, Seattle went down to San Francisco and won there in a close game, in a last second Geno scoring with exactly 12 seconds to go. And what's happened since then? Seahawks haven't lost. Seahawks are 4-0 since that game, including that game. And so do I think that this Seahawks team is the same as the 2005 Seahawks? No, I don't. I don't think that. Do I think that they might be the 2012 Seahawks? They might be. They might be. What do I mean by that? Well, the 2012 Seahawks, I mean, that was a juggernaut. I mean, honestly, the Seahawks offense at the end of that season was the best stretch of Seahawks offense probably I've ever seen. That was the read zone. Teams didn't know how to handle it. Marshawn and Russell were just terrorizing people, but they were missing a pass rush. Chris Clemens got injured in the game against Washington in the first playoff win in Washington. And Bruce Irvin, the rookie, who was like always just an okay pass rusher, was their only guy that they had to turn to against Atlanta. And they just didn't have the horses in the pass rush. So what did they do? They went out in the offseason and they got Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, and the rest is history. Well, this Seahawks team, I think, has found itself defensively. I think that offensively, you're seeing some of the pieces come together. You could say they might be a guard away, like maybe some investment on the offensive line away. They might be another, like maybe a dominant edge rusher away. Like it's possible. I don't know that those are as clear of need. I think the offensive line is a very clear need, but you could say this team might make some noise this year and that they will be able to like patch up some of the things that they need to really be a contender next year. It's possible that, like, as you look around, if this Seahawks team, if this offense really does become more reliable and a group that you can believe is going to threaten 100 yards rushing every game, I'm not even talking about 120, 130, 150, just 100 yards rushing, which is a pretty modest number. And if you're talking about an offensive line that can hold up against at least average defenses, yeah, I think the Seahawks can win every one of the rest of their games. So I do see some residue from history repeating itself potentially there with the Seahawks team. I do feel like beating that 49ers team was a big moment for this franchise and for this particular group of Seahawks. Even if the 49ers are, a decaying group right now. Keep in mind back then in week 11 when they played, the 49ers had just beat the Bucs. They were above 500. They were really, they were headed toward trying to win the division in a home game. And they, similar to Packers fans, you could not find a 49ers fan that was worried about the Seahawks in that game. They were brimming with confidence. How are they feeling now? So I get it. We're at this point that we've seen multiple times where nobody really fears the Seahawks. Even Rams fans. God, man. Talk about a silly, silly group of people. They're like the most non-serious fan base. Everything in LA is non-serious for the most part. Because, I don't know if it's like the beaches, they don't need sports. Like they just aren't, I don't think they take sports seriously. They're very much front runners, and we'll set all that aside. But I've seen tweets and other things about Rams fans actually wanting to maybe see the Seahawks win this game because it helps the Rams' chances and how the playoff seeding will work of who they'd face in the first round, because they're not worried about facing the Seahawks in week 18. They know they'll win that game. Okay. But that's where we are. So as Seahawks fans, I think you got to kind of understand where we are. Not because it's makes you mad. Maybe it does. It does irk me a little bit, but I kind of cherish it. The last few years, we've had a team that deserved to be ridiculed, deserved to be ignored, deserved to be an assumed win on your schedule. Like they were pushovers. That's who the Seahawks have been for years. That's not who they are right now. So it's kind of this really just tasty moment where the Seahawks are tougher, better, and improving. And most people just don't know it. So is there a chance they'll go out tonight and just make this look like a very silly set of things to have talked about? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that this team is like still significantly worse than the Packers. I don't think so. And in fact, I think this is potentially the coming out party for this team. And if you win this game and you're at 5 in a row, and then you go and you play the Vikings, who have a lot of respect and are in a lot of ways the test of whether this team can really win in the playoffs, because you're going to face a defense that is among the most ferocious in the NFL. And you have an offensive line that everybody considers your Achilles heel. If you can win these two games against the best division in football and one of the best divisions to ever exist, according to Mike Sando's research, you know, we'll start having a lot of fun. Now, they could just as easily go into the Bears on a short Thursday night and drop a really frustrating one. Who knows? But we're at that point. We're at the precipice of proving relevance. And that's a fun time to be a fan. That's a really fun time to kind of know a secret that other people don't yet know. Hawks fan Matt Man with a super chat says, are you at the point yet where you won't be happy with a moral victory? That's a great question, Matt. I'm curious what you all think about this too. Put it in chat, put it in comments. Would you be happy with a moral victory? I will always have Cope on my side. That's just like, I talk about the Seahawks every single day. This is 266 straight days I've talked about the Seahawks. You only do that if you've got the ability to cope with the bad stuff. And I am really, really confident about the direction of this team. I'm confident about Mike McDonald. And so I said it earlier this year. I said it is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he was going to build a great defense here. I compared him to Mike Holmgren. I had the same level of confidence with Mike Holmgren when he came in that I just knew he was going to, develop a quarterback and he was going to develop an elite offense. Didn't know when, but I knew he was going to do it. I feel that way about Mike McDonald, and that's paid off. I wouldn't say paid off. That has been, I think, accurate to this point. And I think I feel that way regardless of the outcome of tonight's game. If the Packers score 40 points, I'm not going to think that Mike McDonald's a bad defensive coach and he's been found out. What I likely would think in that situation is, okay, he's had some moments when he faces an offensive coordinator for the first time, like against Mike McDaniel, his first year as DC for Baltimore, where he's been gotten. And where if he doesn't have the tendencies to really figure out what they do, he hasn't had the experience and play calling against them, that could happen in a first game. And I think I have a ton of respect for Matt LaFleur. So there will be a lot of folks that would look at that and say, okay, he's a fraud. They're not that good. I wouldn't. And I'll say that now. Is there a chance that the Seahawks offensive line collapses again, can't do anything right, looks really bad? 100%. That's a possibility. Will that mean to me that the Seahawks offense is hopeless? No, it'll just mean that back to the drawing board. So I think I'm answering the question a little differently than it was asked. I don't know that I'll be having moral victories, but I will always be evaluating every single aspect of where this team is going. And it would surprise me if there was no aspect of what the Seahawks do tonight that is encouraging. And even if that's the case, I still believe in the direction of where this team's going. So probably the straightest answer to your question is I won't be happy with a moral victory, but I absolutely would look for potentially positive aspects that other people might not. So I will always try to be straight with it. So I'm not going to try to invent something because that doesn't do me or anyone else any good, but I will try to accurately, dispassionately as possible, evaluate the team. Karen Payne did a little super thanks there. Appreciate you, Karen. Thank you for doing that. If you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. There's thousands of you watching. I don't think we have thousands of likes. So let's get a bunch of likes on there. It just takes a second to like. If you haven't headed over to tiktok.com/hawkblogger, please do. We're closing in on 1,000 followers there. We just started this week, and that will allow me to have live content there as well. So really would love to get over 1,000 followers if you could help. And also, sign up at patreon.com/hawkblogger and make sure you sign up for the Seahawks fan ticket registry. After this show, I will send out one last email blast for people that want to buy tickets to the game tonight. Let's get as many Seahawks butts and seats as possible. All right. We've got another super chat. This one's from Hawks F10. I don't exactly know how to pronounce that username. Hawks Flock. I think that's probably what it's trying to be. Hawks flock. So have you gotten a chance to watch Coach McDonald's interview with NBC? If so, what are your takeaways? Great question. Yeah, this is something worth finding if you haven't already. They did an interview with a high school classmate of his who she has, been a really good athlete, has gone on to be a really good announcer, commentator, and she did the interview with him. It was kind of like a high school reunion. They went through yearbook pictures and talked about, Mike McDonald as an athlete in high school and that he was a better baseball player than he was a football player. And, Mike is a very self-deprecating guy. I think he's very uncomfortable with the spotlight on him. He kept trying to defer back to his classmate. But if you watch that, I think you probably walk away with the same impression of Mike McDonald that I've had this whole time in kind of getting to know him, is that he's a nerdy, nice, respectful, high integrity, highly motivated, highly intelligent person. Like, he's a guy that is not going to make the funniest joke probably most of the time. He is not going to be the life of the party. He is going to sometimes search for the right words, and they're not always going to feel like they connect exactly emotionally. Like, there's going to be some times where it's just not quite, he's not going to be Dan Campbell. That's not who Mike McDonald is. But he is incredibly ambitious. He's very confident. I think that's the thing that people maybe misread on him, because he tries to be so self-deprecating and kind of, deflect credit and all this other stuff. I think people might think that is insecurity. I think the guy knows how smart he is and cherishes the work. I think he loves the work. And I think that shows up. The one thing in that whole interview that I think is worth really highlighting was he was asked what he picked up from John Harbaugh, the Baltimore experience that he had there and so forth. And it was to love your players, to have your players' backs. That was really interesting to me. And I think that was probably the most unique insight I got from that interview, was how important it is to him that his players know that he's got their backs and that they love him and that they love to play for him. And I think that it's been a process to get there. I'm not even totally sure they're all the way there. But I'll tell you what, winning is a great lubricant for any, any locker room, any relationship, to kind of make it more, to accelerate the bonding process, So I think that was a really, it was a fun interview to see him in that mode. The other thing I'm thinking is that was a 20-minute interview. And I can tell you for certain, Mike McDonald, it uses every single minute of the week to get his team prepared. And so this being a Sunday night football game, stealing away minutes for him, I bet you that's been on his mind. Not to mention he's got, a newborn at home. And even though he's acknowledging he's not getting a lot of time with his son, it's got to be on his mind. It's got to be affecting all that. So yeah, I thought it was a really worthwhile interview to watch. If you haven't seen it, maybe give that a look. But really, really happy to have that guy as our head coach for as long as he is willing and able to do it. I think he's going to be a great head coach for a long time. So I think we talked about most of the pieces that I wanted to bring to you. Oh, I mentioned a couple things, some new insights that I kind of had. I don't know how new they are, but I'll mention them anyway. When looking at this matchup, one of the things to really be aware of. With Jair Alexander out, you're going to be getting a lot of Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine at corner. You're going to get Keyshawn Nixon will move into slot. And Nixon's actually played pretty well this year. He's been one of their best corners. But Eric Stokes is a guy that has really, really struggled. He's number 21. So keep an eye out for him. And he's a guy that I kind of wonder about whether or not this gives the Seahawks a chance to get DK Metcalf a little bit more involved. And as I kind of let's look at Eric Stokes. So Eric Stokes is 6 feet, 194 pounds. He was a first round pick, but he's just not been good his whole career. And Packers fans are talking about picking up, Patrick Peterson, like the 35-year-old, whatever he is, corner, because they just don't want to see Eric Stokes anymore. There's been a guy that's given up some plays. He's given up 3 touchdowns this year, even though he doesn't have that many snaps. And I just wonder if he's a guy that can be got. Carrington Valentine will be the other outside corner, most likely. They're both 6 feet, so neither one of them have height. And Valentine was a 7th round pick last year. He's also not been very good and has given up, a number of big plays. He's given up his passer rating, I believe, 104.5 is the passer rating he's surrendered so far this year. To give you an idea of Stokes has given up 108.8. So those are your 2 starting corners on the outside. And I think that that's potentially meaningful going into this game. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that the Packers run the ball a ton up the middle. And this has been something that has been a weak spot for the Seahawks at times. And if you look across the whole season, like against the Giants, for example, against the Giants, the Seahawks gave up a ton of rushing yards in the middle of the field. And that's kind of really hurt their numbers across the whole year. And so if I look and I limit run game and I limit it to runs inside the tackles, all right? As far as rush yards go, the Seahawks, 4 of their best games against interior rushing this whole year, their 4 best games have all come since week 9. Against the Rams, against the 49ers, against the Jets, and the first game against the Cardinals. The only one that doesn't is the second game against the Cardinals. And a lot of that, I think, was kind of some garbage yardage. So I'm not as worried about that. But point being is the Seahawks' interior run defense will be tested in this game, 100%. Seahawks know that. And the Seahawks knew that against the Cardinals. The Cardinals had also been a primarily inside running team. And when they came in and tried the Seahawks with James Conner, who is a similar back, he's not the same back as Josh Jacobs, but he's a similar bruising, tackle-breaking back. The Cardinals exited with their tails between their legs. So I think that that's going to be another part of this game, like a micro aspect of this game, that is a macro part of the outcome. If the Seahawks are able to stuff the interior run, then I think they've got a very, very good shot to win this game. So those were a couple of the pieces that I wanted to bring up. As I said, just about everybody's picking the Packers to win. Packers have been stable favorites, 2.5 points on the road. We'll see. We will see. Folks, give the show a like, click subscribe. Make sure you become a channel member if you haven't already. Go over to patreon.com/hawkblogger, join there. And make sure you sign up for this ticket registry. I'm going to send out the last pieces here, last email blast here in just a few minutes. Go sign up there. We'll be able to get more Seahawks fans in seats. So really, really looking forward to seeing that. Oh, before I forget, I'm still offering to buy a pair of Seahawks seats from the registry and give them to some lucky Seahawks fan for free if we can get a couple more sales of JK Boots using code HawkBlogger. So you go to jkboots.com, use code HawkBlogger. That will get you a 10% discount for a wonderful either holiday present for yourself or for somebody else. It will also give you a chance to win this pair of Seahawks themed boots that are amazing. So you gotta love that. And could make it possible for another pair of Seahawks fans to go to a game and helps the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. So all great reasons to use code HawkBlogger. Would appreciate if you want to do that as well. All right, folks, that will do it for today's edition of HawkBlogger Mornings. I will certainly be active on social. I will see you tonight for the post-game show and cannot wait to hang out with all of you and hopefully celebrate, maybe commiserate, but we will find out one way or another later tonight. The post-game show will start roughly an hour after the game. For me, I will get home and we will do it all then. All right, folks, thank you again. Have a wonderful Seahawks Sunday. Take care.